Okay. Call the meeting to order. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our first item this evening concerns the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, March 23rd. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is minutes of the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee meeting of Thursday, March 12th. Recommendation to receive.
So moved. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item of business arising out of that committee's meeting concerns the adoption of the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee's 2015 work plan. The committee's recommendations that the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee's 2015 work plan be approved.
So moved. Second. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Towner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 concerns City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4549. This pertains to 716 and 718 Morrison Avenue. Staff recommendations that Council give second and third readings to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4549.
So moved. Second. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Marsden. All in favor? Opposed? And the late button, Councillor Zarillo.
You're fast. I just wanted to share with staff, because I won't be voting to move this one forward. My concerns were that it just wasn't shown to be able to accommodate the triplex with garages at this time without significant DVPs, and I think that we should limit DVPs as much as we can. Thank you.
Good. Okay, we'll do it again. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Zarillo is opposed. The motion carries.
Item 4 concerns City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4546. This pertains to 606 Alderson Avenue. Staff recommendations that Council give second and third readings to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4546.
So moved. Moved by Councillor O'Neill. Second by Councillor Towner. Councillor Zarillo.
Again, I had concerns about this one, not shown that the site can accommodate a triplex with what I would consider adequate car access. And I actually have concerns about the safety of the courtyard area in regards to children playing, residents in that area. So again, I just don't think that currently it's been shown that the site can accommodate the new zoning. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I'm sort of disappointed to hear that staff pulled out that second parking spot for the one unit. And I will approve this here, and hopefully that we can look to putting that parking spot back in, because these units are big enough to accommodate families, so I think we need them. And if it doesn't happen, then I will turn it down at fourth reading, but I will put it through. Thank you.
You, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. The discussion at public hearing has raised a lot of important issues, and it's looking at a lot of them deal with the housing choices policy that a previous council passed unanimously. It was in January of 2011, and I guess there's only 3 people on this council who were part of that council, the 3 in the center here. And everybody else on council, the other 6 people, have inherited the housing choices policy, which I think is a very good policy. And it seems to be one of the sticking points over this policy for many council members, not only new ones, but people who voted in favor of it in the first place. One of the sticking points is the 1.5 parking spots per home. And that's been a sticking point as far as I've been on council, as long as I've been on council. It always gets raised. So I'm happy to hear that staff is starting the process to take another look at housing choices, because I would like to see council really get behind the housing choices initiative, because I think it's an important one. I think it really provides choices for affordable living in Coquitlam. We hear a lot about oversized homes on lots in Coquitlam, And this is going the opposite way. We have smaller homes concentrated on lots. They're going to be much more affordable. They will support families. And the Housing Choices area is in the older part of Coquitlam that it's needing some, it's going to, many of the owners are asking for the ability to redevelop. For the most part, there's good transportation networks, whether it's along Austin, whether it's along North Road, Lougheed Highway, those sorts of areas, close to either buses or coming to the SkyTrain too. So we're going to see families with a lot less desire to have 2 and 3 cars. It's happening now. Any of us who have children who are in their 20s and 30s now know that there's much less of a desire for those young people to have cars. So I think our Housing Choices policy now does reflect that, but I'd like to see that confirmed going forward. I'm definitely in support of this development, but I do recognize that there's a lot of questions around council over the Housing Choices policy, and so we probably should have another look at it. But I'm quite content to go forward with that now, and I think this is going to be a good development that will give young people or older people wanting to downsize, young people looking to buy their first freestanding homes, or older people wanting to downsize from bigger homes, a real opportunity to stay in Coquitlam, the city they love, and without having to pay the high prices to have a regular-sized home, and probably lower property taxes too, of course, with smaller homes. It's a big deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
You know, one of the things we constantly hear is that, people don't want big homes in their neighborhood. We also hear people want affordable homes. And, however, we also hear that people always complain that there's no parking. And I just wish we could get to the point that we could have smaller homes and do these things, and it always comes down to parking for cars. And I just hope we get to a place someday in the city where there's transportation, better transit, and that we're not always having this discussion about where we're going to park 6 cars. But that's what the discussion, that's what the decision comes down to. On this one, I completely support the concept. I like the look. I think on a corner lot, I think this is an area where we want to see smaller homes. We want to see more affordable homes in this area. The Housing Choices does that. I'm troubled by this particular design in that I really don't like this long driveway coming in at the back. I think it's a lot of asphalt. It's a lot of ground that's just being paved over just to provide access for 3 cars off of a courtyard. And at the same time, we've got this long driveway that's not going to permit any parking in it, because then you're going to block people trying to get in and out. So I'm happy moving ahead with this, because I do want to support the concept, but like Councillor Reid, I want to see some changes before this comes back and forth. And I'd like to see some way of changing the access or configuring it so we just don't have this long sloping driveway coming in from the back. And if we can somehow work with the buildings that are here, but maybe change the access points, maybe we even gain an extra parking spot out of this. So I'm supportive of moving it forward, but I want to see some of that addressed before I'm willing to give it 4th reading. Thank you. Or pass 4th reading.
Thank you. Councillor Towner.
Thank you. I don't want to repeat what's already been stated, but I want to just indicate that I am in support of this as well, for the same reasons that Councillor O'Neill and Hodge stated. It's a modest-sized development. The size, look, design, it fits in with the neighborhood, being a corner lot. And I also like the fact that the outdoor amenity space on the lot is exceeding the requirements. Densifying is a good thing for our city, and we're also seeing issues of trying to promote more neighborliness in our neighborhoods. And I think this kind of development promotes that rather than some of the other types of structures that have gone up. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you. There is a bit of a point there on that. We have some work to do to continue to refine Housing Choices. It was intended to make it so that we weren't building well, essentially the same amount of floor space, and that's what probably would get built here, is the same amount of floor space in one house, including basement, and it would have at least 2 units in it, and therefore at least 4 cars, and we'd have similar challenges with less parking for it, because we can mandate parking and we can mandate design issues and such with housing choices, but we can't mandate design issues at all with single-family homes, even when they have a suite. And some of them, because of the size and because we're not able to mandate design issues like exterior stairs, we end up with 2 suites. And Councillor Zerlo, for example, raised the question of the number of illegal suites that there are. How do we mandate? How do we manage the challenges of the... We know too many houses end up with the secondary suite, the tertiary suite, I guess it is. So I'm fully supportive of housing choices. In this instance, I like the design. I have no issues with that. I don't have any issues on the parking side. I know that there's some slope issues related to the site, but those would exist no matter what we build there. On the steepness of the driveway there, every driveway on the street that I live on is twice as steep as this, so getting out in the snow is something that residents are able to figure out. In the end, I want us to examine. I've spoke with an owner today who lives next to one of our housing choices projects, and I've got some interesting feedback on how we might continue to tweak that process. But in the end, it's about getting 1,500 square foot homes again, and the only way we're going to get 1,500 square foot and 1,700 square foot detached homes in Coquitlam is through a program like Housing Choices. So let's continue to make it better. I have some trepidations as well. They've been spoken about here, and I'll look to that at development permit. But I'm fine with sending it forward at this point. Second and third, Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you very much. I have similar concerns about the parking, the layout of this development. I had raised a couple issues to staff and through council about the 1.5 on single family and some of the and raising that to 2, and I've raised that before and asked staff to look at that issue. The other issue that I've raised that staff had council's put as a C priority was our bylaws and enforcing illegal suites throughout the city. It's just not where we're talking here, and so if we enforce our bylaws, regardless if it's this or a single family house or a large family house, you could have a smaller house of 2,000, it could have 2 suites in it, depends on what the size is. It's up to us as a city to make sure those things are enforced. And I would hopefully that was a year ago that I raised staff to look into that issue through council. And council did not see it as an A priority. They did not see the urgency to go that way. But I do think it's a growing issue in our city as we densify these neighborhoods and as with housing choices. I do think, as I supported housing choices at the time, but I think we are having some issues with variances on these. We're trying to do some squeezing in of these things that weren't intended when we passed housing choices. We're getting people saying, oh, if I get a variance here or there, and I can now make this fit. I understand people say I could have a duplex or this number of units, but I think if we're going to be true to housing choices, we should be looking at the lots that it truly fits. We said this was going to be for larger lots with an X number of thing that fits these triplex or fourplexes, and I think I would like us to go back and be a little more vigilant, staff, on that. I'll move this forward to for fourth reading, but I will say, like Councillor Reid has said, I'm looking at that extra parking spot, but it is a concern of how we're going about this and how they fit into the neighborhood. And affordability, I don't think we want to call detached housing affordable housing. These units will be probably in the $700,000 range. These are not what you call affordable housing options. So they are less expensive than maybe a single family house may be, but they are not, to the average young person starting out, an affordable housing type. So, thank you.
Councillor Morrison.
Thanks. I'll share my concerns as well. When I visited the site, Clearly, it's been said that parking's an issue, and we've heard it up on Burke Mountain where people aren't using the garages that are there; they're using them for storage. So we're building what people need, which is smaller houses. I really envision these garages being used for storage, and there just isn't surface parking here. So a number of the other items in the housing choice we've looked at have a number of surface parking options. This one doesn't seem to have it, so I will concur with Councillor Reid and say, really encourage staff to go back and say, is there something we can do to augment, in this particular case, the surface parking? Recognizing housing choices is supposed to have a certain lot size. This fits that. That's great. But there are slope issues. And so there's sometimes a lot just doesn't work. This one, being a corner lot, that makes sense to me from a housing choices perspective, but I'd really like to see a little bit more surface parking. The feedback we've heard from the residents in this particular area is that the street parking is currently being utilized. So if we are looking to rely at all on auxiliary parking that's off-site, it's just not there. So we really have to look and say, how do we maximize it? And so, again, we'll revisit the housing options. But for this one, see if we can do something on this site. I would move second and third, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. No other speakers? All in favour? Opposed? Councillor Zarrillo is opposed. The motion carries.
Next item, item 5, concerns City of Coquitlam Citywide Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4547 and City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4548. Both bylaws pertain to 3404 Roxton Avenue. Staff recommendations that Council give second, third, fourth, and final readings to City of Coquitlam Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4547 and second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4548.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Morrison. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6 concerns City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4550. This is for 515 Austin Avenue. Staff recommendation is that Council give second and third readings to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4550.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Morrison. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. This is really hard for me when I am not going to vote in favor of something, and especially when I think the architect's one of the best that has ever been in our city. There are several reasons why, and the main thing is I used to live there in one of the high-rises when they were first built, and it was hard to get out onto the little road as it was then, 20 years ago. So I can imagine what it's like now. I mean, there's more buildings and all of that going on. So that road is, and I'm talking Whiting Way, is really it's really traumatic right now to try and get anywhere on it. It's where it's always full of kids. It's the back door, the back gate into all the businesses like McDonald's on Austin. The lot as it stands now is being used for parking because there simply isn't anywhere to park. The gentleman who spoke here this evening is correct. People trying to get out of this building onto Whiting Way will be sitting there forever trying to get out because I don't know how many cars the lights at Whiting let go through, but I think it's only like 6 or something. And so then if they're backed up like 13, 20, which they are now, never mind without this building, that's difficult. The other problem I'm having right now is the transportation plan hasn't been done. And I think we're doing the Lougheed neighborhood plan right now and Coquitlam Lougheed neighborhood plan, and I think there's a lot that's going to come out of that plan, and one of the things is what is going to happen on Whiting Way. Now, I've lived in this city a long time, and when I look at the use that Whiting Way gets, it's quite a lot. I used to live on Appian Way, and then 20 years later, I lived right in one of the high-rises, so I'm quite familiar with the neighborhood. Whiting Way is sort of a shortcut to a lot of things right now, but as the older apartments on Whiting start to develop, and they will. They're on SkyTrain. And as some of the other commercial ventures along North Road start to develop, and they will because they're on SkyTrain, the traffic situation and transportation is going to be, quite interesting, and how we're going to move people out and around. I think we really have to take a good look at that, because if we build another one first, and then we get another 20-unit building or 20-story building a block away, where are all these people going to go? How are they going to get in and out? On the main road, on North Road, we've got a SkyTrain, and that certainly is disruptive in a way to traffic as well. Mostly it's a really highly constrained site, and I've gone out and I drove around it again and looked at it. It's really difficult. There are some issues with it, and there are some development permits that are needed, and I understand that. I'm having a lot of problems putting it alone. And now this, you want to talk iconic site, this is the entrance. This is Austin and North Road. This is where we say, hi, you've arrived. Well, you're in Coquitlam. And right now it's not saying much, but it should. And that is why I wanted to see a more comprehensive development along North Road and along Austin. We need to have something absolutely smashing there. It has to be something good. And across the street, I would be demanding the same kind of project. I often wonder how, when I go to Surrey and to Metrotown and to other places, that I see some slender towers, as the architect has called them. They're quite slender. But I see they have curvy balconies and they have different wow factors on the outside, which I really don't think are perhaps the most expensive fittings to put on the outside. But they certainly do create interest, and they show that you've arrived somewhere, because everybody remembers. You go to Surrey right now and you'll say, remember the one where the curvy balconies are? And people go, oh yeah, I know where you are, we'll stop there. So all of these things combined, the thing that concerns me the most is the parking issues and the transportation issues. I don't like to turn this down, but I don't know if there's another way to defer or something until more of the transportation studies are done, which would take into consider the whole block. As to what might be allowed there and where we're going and how we are truly going to handle transportation in that neighborhood. So I will look to staff after everyone else has spoken for the most appropriate thing to do. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the issue of traffic is something that is significant and we should be looking at, but I don't think it should hold up our approval of second and third readings. What I think we can do here, we've already heard from staff, and I'm really glad that staff was able to answer this question for me during public hearing. We've already heard from them that Whiting Way can handle the traffic itself, that it will be fine. I mean, it's been envisioned, some sort of density on that lot that's similar to what we have now has been envisioned for a long time, and Whiting Way is up to snuff to handle it. What the problem does seem to be, though, is where Whiting Way intersects Austin. And I would think that in the time between second and third readings, with a specific direction from council, time between second and third readings and final readings, if indeed we give it second and third readings, that our traffic experts, a guy like Dan Mooney, who does so much good work in traffic, or somebody else in our engineering department, can take a look at that intersection and say, holy mackerel, the people from the towers who are there already are right. There's tons of traffic backing up there. It will be worse when the new 18-story tower goes up, or 20, and so we've got to fix that interchange. We have to fix that intersection. We've got to make the green light coming out of Whiting Way a lot longer, and da-da-da. So that is the sort of thing I think we can and should do. I'd look to staff to do that. I don't know if we need to give them any more than general direction. I think there's a general agreement here on council that that's a significant issue, but I don't think it's significant enough to hold up what is in fact a very modest rezoning from RM5 to RM6 that is actually going to get us quite a lovely looking building, although we're not supposed to talk about aesthetics. It looks like it's going to be a very nice building. It is kind of slender. And of course, this is really close to the new, to the existing SkyTrain station at Lougheed Mall, but also really close to to that same SkyTrain station that will now serve the Evergreen extension, which I think is significant. So this is the sort of development that I think we are looking for in that area. I think it's not an overly huge high-rise tower. It's actually fairly modest, I think, but it has to be because of the sort of site that it's on. The traffic is an issue, though. I don't think we should penalize the owner of this and the developer for the fact that the company is not part of some consortium of companies that controls both sides, north and south of Austin, on the east of North Road, to build some sort of majestic entryway. That would be wonderful, but I think we will get quite a lovely building here. We did hear that there was some interest in looking at the lot next door immediately to the west, and that didn't prove fruitful. I don't think we should penalize the owner of this lot for that. This owner, this architect, are putting forward a very good project, a modest rezoning request that fits right into the long-term plan that's been there for a long time and fits right in with the new TDS plan as well that we have. So I'm in support of this, but I would like to see some work done on that intersection. And it's not a zoning thing, but it's definitely will make us, I think on council and the existing neighbors in the area, more comfortable with going ahead with this if we know that that intersection is being looked at seriously now, and it will be, and maybe even there's changes even before this would be built that are needed now. Obviously, it's creating a problem. The traffic there is creating a problem already. Although, as Councillor Wilson suggested, the completion of the SkyTrain line that might alleviate some of those traffic concerns in another year and a half or so. Anyway, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if somebody on staff can talk to the issue of, if this does pass second and third reading, that if we can have some sort of study of the intersection before we get to fourth reading or at fourth reading. That sort of thing they could give us at fourth reading?
I would think so, absolutely. In fact, whether or not, I think there is an issue that has been raised tonight about the corner, and I would argue that perhaps the corner needs to be examined for the possibility of 3 lanes that included a left turn and a right turn out that gets rid of the loads faster.
This is a planning and engineering issue.
That's an engineering planning issue. I'm sure they'll take that to heart, given the comments here, notwithstanding whatever the answer that council gives in a few minutes.
Your Worship, certainly, yeah, we would work with our colleagues in engineering, transportation planning section. There's been a number of questions raised tonight around the local road network there, the intersection at Whiting Way, what the current condition are, what's traffic volume, what's the capacity, are there some improvements that can be looked at sooner than later. I think also it would be beneficial to get a sense of, the other development project was mentioned that's sort of in the discussion and review stage, and where that's at and what those potential road improvements might be. And as well for planning, we're taking notes here that we will certainly plug into the Coquitlam Lougheed neighborhood plan process and really focusing on the transportation planning in this area. My colleague in engineering, General Manager Dozecki may have some comments as well. We work closely with them. If Council wanted to support the project, bring it back at time of development permit consideration with that sort of analysis, that sort of input from engineering.
Mr. Diozecki.
Through your worship, I'd like to add just one thing, that the signal timing at the intersection of Whiting and Austin is likely essentially determined by the adjacent intersection at North and Austin. So I don't really see that we can do any significant changes to the timing plan at the Whiting and Austin intersection. However, your suggestion of adding more lanes on Whiting probably would bring measurable benefits to the operation of the intersection. Another somewhat related comment I'd like to make is that transportation planning at this point did not require the proponent to conduct an independent traffic study, simply because the traffic conditions are very different from the regular conditions due to the Evergreen Line construction. And if under the current conditions we would conduct a study, the consultant would have to make so many assumptions that are very, very difficult to check, that the outcome and the recommendations of the study, even with the best intent, could be not exactly what we are hoping for. So I think at the staff level, the best option is that we will look at how we can improve the capacity and the operations of the intersection, and see how much merit the older traffic analysis has as part of the current neighborhood plan.
Thank you. Councillor Asmundson.
Well, thank you very much. I had some quite concerns about this project coming in here tonight about it. I think the architect, one of the things I had talked about before is the adjoining properties, and I had asked a question about what that impact, but it really wouldn't change the access in off Whiting or solve the parking in that regards and the access into that site any more than what it is today. I do know, and I thank Councillor Wilson for raising the questions, that traffic has pretty much returned to normal on North Road. The medium work and everything is pretty much done. So traffic flows. I drive both roads on a regular basis, and so Whiting Way was used during the SkyTrain construction, but you have your parking lane back on North Road in front of the businesses there. You have the 2 lanes flowing through. So traffic, and most people are going to stay on either North Road or Austin. They're not going to come off because they're going straight through. So I see the traffic calming down there. I'd also say, since I drive on Austin, that the light at Whiting and Austin is also a censored light, that cars, that when they hit that intersection on Whiting, creates a sensor to activate, and also stays depending on the volume of cars coming through there. So the other problem is if you activate unnecessarily too long leaving Whiting, you create a bigger backup on Austin. But I drive that up and down Austin all the time, and I haven't seen too many times on my side big backups up onto Whiting Way. I think we should study the issue. I do think what Mr. Johansson said earlier about the next high-rise, about another exit through onto North Road and that connectivity and changing our road network would probably be the better solution. And I can't see how you can get an extra lane in at Austin and Whiting with the 2 developments that are pre-existingly there. So I think the direction that staff are looking through the Lougheed-Coquitlam plan is probably the better way of alleviating some of the pressures on Whiting. But I say I drive there all the time. That has not been one of my concerns. My concerns was the driveway in and out, the access point there, but really I think the lowest point is the architect sign explained to me, and that adjoining the other C2 site wouldn't change that at all. So that cleared up something. But I will say with Councillor Reid that I've said to this architect before that I prefer to see unique looking buildings that are an attractive point. I've said in the city center, and I think on the Austin up there you did take that to hand. You put in some curvatures up there, and I appreciate that. I would like to see you look at some of what it says with the balconies, just to create that bit of shape, something that you did on the Austin. I'd appreciate that when you come back for the 4th and final. But I'm going to move this through. I think some of my questions were answered. And I think, looking back for the people who lived in that area, if you look at the staff, that in 1989 there was an 18-story that didn't get built, but it's always been proposed for that type of tower to be on that. And so the traffic planning and the neighborhood plan at that time would have taken into consideration of Whiting Way and the traffic volumes there. So I'm a lot more comfortable now moving this forward than I was before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. I appreciate the dialogue about this tonight because it is a challenging one. You know, when you look at Whiting Way, the traffic issues we have through there, I think, have been very clearly articulated. That said, it fits what we want to do close to SkyTrain stations. We want to densify. I like the idea of, as Councillor Reid speaks of an iconic entranceway to your city. That's great. There still is land on the corner. There's still a neighboring site that's vacant that, you know, perhaps the owners of those sites can come up with something creative, and this one still fits. I really encourage staff to come back with the transportation solutions that are going to help move traffic through there, so I look forward to that. The one speaker tonight that spoke that his concerns were with regards to construction traffic, and I think everybody on this council has heard, and our staff have heard very clearly, challenges with construction and traffic flows during that. So I would encourage it to see if, as we move forward, especially since there's another proposal half a block away, there is a vacant lot there. If there's something from a temporary access point that might be able to do to help move vehicles, to help move construction vehicles through back onto North Road or access into it, if there's something that can be developed there or at least investigated, I would really strongly encourage that, because as we start to pour concrete there, or, well, as we're not going to pour it, but as it starts to pour, there's going to be a lot of trucks coming through there. And to what we've heard tonight, there's already traffic. So I really want to see, I'm going to say yes to second and third reading, but I really need to see some steps that are going to mitigate those concerns in order for us to go forward with fourth. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Zerilla.
Thank you. I think from the conversation that we had earlier, a tower can be accommodated there right now with the current zoning. And my concern is before completion of the Coquitlam Lougheed neighborhood plan, we haven't yet received all of the pending community input. So at this point in time, I see no reason to change the current zoning. Outside of that, there's going to be big changes that are going to happen with this plan that we're working on with this Lougheed Coquitlam plan. And this idea of doing piecemeals at this point in time seems a bit of a risk. And it goes back to the idea of the traffic flow, about the movement of traffic, and along Whiting, you know, if we're thinking about the whole street, this is a big impact to this community. And like I said, I wouldn't want to do it piecemeal by piecemeal. And correct me if I'm wrong through the chair, but we've now, I think, opened up right from Smith all the way to Austin the ability to almost do Whiting the whole way, because we now have the ability to go with the new polygon development to go from Smith down past the polygon along Cottonwood, hook onto Whiting, and we can parallel North Road all the way from that development. So I mean, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that people will do that. They will take the opportunity to do parallel to North Road, but do it through the residential area so they don't have to stick on lights. So I need to see the whole thing before I start approving rezonings, and especially in this area where it can already accommodate with the current zoning a tower of reasonable size on this corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
This one I've been wrestling with since getting originally reading the paperwork on this, and you know, since first reading, and then listening to the comments tonight, and listening to my colleagues tonight. You know, it is a constrained site, and and I guess in a perfect development world, we would have had the owner would have been able to acquire the site to the west and have a nice corner lot and be able to do something really great. And I appreciate, the work that's been done under a very challenging site. This is not an easy site to make work because of the elevations, because of the access. So there's, I think the architect has done a good job. Has he done is this a great project? No, it's not a great project. It's a good project, and I think we can do better. I am worried about the traffic. I'd like to see a little bit more I'd like to see the final report on that and see exactly what it is. I'm not comfortable just sort of saying, well, we'll go ahead and do this, but, we want to have another look at the design before fourth reading. We want to see what the traffic is going to be like. To me, there's still a lot of unanswered questions that I'm not comfortable moving this forward without a little bit more definition on some of the, the look of it, for one thing, and also where we are with the traffic. I do want to support higher density in this area. It's near a SkyTrain station, so I think it's it has a lot going for it. But I still have questions that I don't feel that have been answered or addressed yet. So I'm not going to support it at this time.
Okay. I have a curiosity as to where this is going, because I have some real challenges with this. At the same time, there will be a multifamily building built on this site. It will either be vertical or horizontal. If it's horizontal, the people across the street will get no view whatsoever. As a vertical building, it offers some view, some longer shadows, but some view corridors. It's a constrained site, but not the worst site. I think the traffic challenges at Whiting Way and Austin are manageable by lanes rather than by further constraining Austin's traffic. I don't think that would work. I think the architect has done a nice job. I think this is a good architect, and I think he has, I think, done what he could with a sow's ear, if you will, with a challenged site. I'm still hesitant. The challenge will be, though, is that we're almost at 5 votes to reject this, which puts an odd position on the realities. I don't know if it's possible. I'm reluctant to give it second and third reading because I don't know if all of the issues that we have can be resolved. So can you give it second? Okay, that's it. Oh, Councillor Towner.
Okay. Thank you. A lot of what I had made note of has already been said, but I just want to say our community is changing, especially with respect to the Evergreen line, higher density. We're going that way, and I don't think we should hinder a development because of temporary inconveniences due to construction. I'm also curious, we heard that someone counted 75 cars in a 5-minute period on Whiting Way, and I'm just curious if that was during, like a lot of people who live in Coquitlam, including myself, on a street to a school, traffic gets really busy at 9 and 3. You get lots of traffic at those 2 times. And I'm just curious if this 75 cars in 5 minutes is for the college, when the college is starting or ending for the day. So I would like to hear more about the traffic issues. But I also, with this slender design and higher density for the high-rise, I'm assuming that the suites are smaller, therefore they'll cost less. So doesn't that improve opportunities for people to be homeowners in Coquitlam? And that's something that we all are encouraging, I like to think, I don't know. So anyways, I am in support of it at this point, with the other factors being addressed that have already been expressed.
And the motion is second and third. Further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? I got Councillor Zarrillo, Hodge, Reid, and myself are opposed. The motion carries. We have second and third reading. We'll go forward and see what we come up with development permit.
Next item, item 7, concerns fourth and final reading of Town Centre Parking Management Amendment Bylaw number 4553. Staff recommendations that Council give fourth and final reading to Town Centre Parking Management Amendment Bylaw number 4553.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Asmussen. Councillor Zerillo?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that I will be voting against again today, but I'm not opposed to it in general. Just the timing just doesn't match. I would much rather that it was done in a year from now. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. With the exception of Councillor Zerillo.
Next item, item 8, is fourth and final reading of Subdivision and Development Servicing Amendment Bylaw number 4494. Staff recommendations that Council give fourth and final reading to City Coquitlam Subdivision and Development Servicing Amendment Bylaw number 4494.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Morrison. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 pertains to zoning amendment bylaw number 4556. This is for 826 Dogwood Street. Staff recommendations that Council give first reading to City Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4556 and that this bylaw be referred to public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Morrison.
Question with regards to the 4.5 meter driveway access. Does our fire responders have any concerns with regards to access to the units that would be on the back of the lot in terms of ability to get equipment to them in the event of an emergency?
Not at this time. If the road widths are wide enough for ladders to set up, and there shouldn't be a problem at that time. In this particular structure, there are high-rise procedures, so we'll be using different techniques and straight ladder reach to reach these buildings.
Okay, thank you. And on page 4, there's mixed reference. It says the curbs, gutter, sidewalks, underground all overhead services from the dwelling to the street. And I was looking for an explanation on underground all overhead services.
You don't know what underground overhead services are?
Maybe it was late when I was reading it.
Carl, explain that one. Sorry, Mr.
With pleasure. Through the chair to Councillor Morrison, that basically means there's overhead utility poles in the area, and right now the wires are going from those poles over through the air to the existing unit. If the development goes through, then those overhead services would be put into a conduit underground so that they go from the pole. It's called a dip service.
To service all 4 units, or
Yes.
just the ones at the back of the?
Yes,
all
of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So more aesthetically pleasing, perhaps?
You got it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I had a question. It troubles me a little bit because if you look at the building elevations, that's attachment 5 and attachment 6, the elevations for the internal roads, which is attachment 6, that's the elevations that face the buildings of the same development, have smaller internal windows than the windows that face the outside, if you will, that face the neighbor's property, so that the windows that overlook upon the neighbor's property are actually quite significantly bigger and therefore more of a privacy issue than they've chosen to put on their own property. So the windows that look upon themselves, they've made smaller so that they protect privacy of the units on the same property, but don't go the same way for windows looking at neighbors' property. It seems to me we should have done exactly the opposite of that. Not wanting to get into building design here, but it troubles me that let's go with limiting distances then. We know that the buildings next door will be closer than the buildings on the same property, particularly because there's an internal road, and yet we've gone with big windows facing outward. Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I think you just flagged another design challenge with these housing choices projects. Well, first, as you're well aware, under the the building code with the side elevations, particularly when the building is close to the property line. There's a maximum amount of openings along that wall for fire spread and such. It really becomes a bit of a juggling act when you're trying to site the 4 units on the property, leave room for access and parking, and having the necessary setbacks to have those window openings. I would imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine this design is probably right at the max that you can provide in terms of building code requirements, in terms of window openings. We can look into that if you wish and include it as part of the public hearing brief.
I'm more or less just raising it as a concern that the privacy ought to be considered from the point of view of the privacy that this one infringes upon a neighboring property, not upon itself. I don't care how much privacy they lose against themselves, and yet they protected the internal privacy between the 4 units and then maximized the window area facing the neighbor's property. And it just, we ought to, I would have wanted to see us encourage the exact opposite of that, because, but anyway.
Your Worship, a good observation. Let me take that away. I'll discuss it with the staff working, and we can have some comments around that at the public hearing brief if it's supported going forward.
That said, I like the building design. I like the size of the units. I think this is where, when people talk about making housing choices work and making it demonstrated to work, I think this is where we get to do it, is because they've given us lots of space. Councillor Reid.
Again, I think I spoke at this at first reading, but we've got 7 spaces, and of all the neighborhoods to start, and then there's a comment about the shadow study indicates 4 on-street parking spaces. Well, I don't know how many developments we've used those same 4 spaces for, but we're running out of spaces, folks. So on this one, I will let it go by because it's a flat lot. Doesn't get much flatter around that area. And we don't have the challenging street that we did on the last one. But we really have to look at this. There's nowhere for visitors to park. There's nowhere for anybody to park, folks. So this isn't working. Thank you.
The motion is first reading to a public hearing. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 10 pertains to a temporary use permit renewal authorization for a temporary parking lot at 1401 Austin Avenue for the Hillside Community Church. Staff recommendations that Council approve a 3-year renewal to the temporary use permit for 1401 Austin Avenue, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute it.
So moved. Moved by Councillor Aspenson, seconded by Councillor Towner. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 3 more years.
Your Worship, that's the last formal item on this agenda.
Move adjournment. Moved by Councillor Aspenson, seconded by Councillor Towner to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? Carried unanimously.
I got 25 minutes to take this.
Now, question period. Any members of the audience who have any questions for us, please line up single file. Any questions at all from the audience members on tonight's agenda? Carolyn, anybody? Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, one and only, for staying.